Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have Dr. Beth Westie. Well, she runs her own podcast, the Female Health Solution Podcast. And we're going to talk about her work and her podcast and her experience. So, Dr. Westie, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell me about your health journey, because, you know, what I found is whenever someone focuses on an area of health, unfortunately, they usually have had their own troubles in the past, and it led them to learn about it and then become an expert.
You are 100% right, sir. Yes.
So what happened with you?
I was an athlete growing up. I'm 6'2",
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm a big girl. I played volleyball.
You're tall, yeah.
Yeah. I played volleyball in high school and college, and then actually recently played football for the Minnesota Vixen, which is a women's full tackle football team.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And so I've always been an athlete, always been active, fairly healthy, all this stuff. Well, I'm a chiropractor by training. So when I was in graduate school, I actually had my first 2 kids, graduated, started a clinic, got pregnant and had my third. She was actually a preemie. So I had a preemie, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a brand new business, which was not doing well, if I'm going to be honest, and a crap ton of stress in my life. And I started developing ovarian cysts, and they would burst every month. It was so painful. It would put me on the floor. I never had anything like this before in my life.
Right.
And one of the most frustrating things for me was that I was like, this is so stupid. I'm a doctor. Like, I should know how to deal with this. I should be able to, handle this. And no matter what I tried, just cleaning up my diet. I tried a bunch of supplements. Nothing really helped. And finally, my husband he was like so worried about me. He dragged me into the ER, and they were like, well, you can have birth control and Vicodin. There you go. That'll be fine. See you later.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay. I get other side effects from birth control. I don't really like being on it. And Vicodin, I can't function like that.
That doesn't help anybody. I mean,
No. I was like, that's not a way to live my life. What? Can't we just, why am I having cysts? I didn't have them before. And I understand that I had kids and, a stress and stuff, but really this is it for me. So I left there just feeling completely frustrated, and took all that frustration and just kind of funneled it into a drive to, learn more about why the healthcare system is the way it is, why can't I get this help, and what to do about it. So I dove into, I have an Eastern medicine background as well. I'm trained in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And then I, specializing in fertility actually. So I dove into that background and started realizing, oh my gosh, there's other healing arts that actually work with the female body completely differently, acknowledging that your hormones change throughout the month, that you have 4 different bodies throughout the month. And
4 different bodies. What do you mean?
Yeah. Hormonally. Yeah. The hormones change so much throughout the month that it's chemically things are just different. Right.
Oh, very different is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's super helpful to realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm not crazy. I'm just living in a different body that might need different nutritional support, different, exercise routine to help my body navigate through this phase onto the next phase and function better. So that's essentially what I started doing for myself, is I started aligning my nutrition and everything else with my hormones and my cycle. And then, my body started functioning better, because no matter what I had done before, for a year and a half, I struggled with cysts. A year and a half, over 18 months, every single month I had a cyst that would burst.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's awful. And I was a treating doctor. I had a clinic. I had moments where I had an x-ray room in the back of my office. I run to my x-ray room because I could tell when a cyst was going to burst. And
really?
I would crouch on the floor behind a table, which again, I'm a big girl. I'm not very good at hiding. And I would try and hide because it was so awful. And you just have to wait 15 minutes until the pain subsides where you can move again. And it's one of those things where it's, I had 3 C-sections, and these cysts were more painful than going through, recovery and stuff like that from having babies. It was awful. So
in your situation, what did you figure out that helped you?
Yeah. So finally, when I started eating for my hormones, that allowed my body to produce and maintain a better amount of hormone. Because essentially my hormones were like too high, out of control. My body wasn't processing them out like they should. So once I started aligning my nutrition, and it sounds like super simple, like, oh, that's it? That's all you're doing? Yeah, that's like all I did. I mean, the first month, I still had a cyst that I started doing this, right? I started with myself. First month, I still had a cyst after I started doing this. Second month, the cyst was like much smaller. It didn't burst, but I could tell I still had one there. I still had like pain, but it didn't, not bursting pain. And then by the third month of me doing this, I didn't have any more pain. And it's been 8.5 years and I haven't had a cyst since.
Like, what are the main phases of a woman's cycle and what's important about each phase to do?
Yeah. No, this is a great question. Because again, a lot of us aren't even educated on how the female body works and functions, all this other stuff. And again, a lot of times women don't even pay attention unless they're like trying to get pregnant, right? Then they might pay attention. But when we look at like when the cycle starts, right, hormone levels are at an all-time low. And then after a few days, that estrogen starts to rise. So then that first 2 weeks, essentially, estrogen is the dominant hormone. Also at the same time, your basal body temperature should be the lowest, right? Like the female body, like your body temperature changes throughout the month, When you
say lowest, like how much lower does it go?
Oh, it could be a degree to 2, So like if your basal body temperature is normally like 97.5 degrees, right? Well, yours could be 96.5 degrees in an estrogen phase. Yeah. And then go
What do you
up.
think that does biochemically to you and to your processes and everything?
Yeah. I mean, the female body is designed to have that difference. So it's just, it's a normal function. But that's the thing. Like a lot of women will track their cycle by taking their basal body temperature. It's a fertility technique to see when you're actually ovulating. But that should be a signal. Like a lot of women don't take enough biometrics on themselves to really track where they're at and figure out where their hormones are at, all that stuff. So taking that information can be really, really helpful to say, okay, yep, my basal body temperature is low here. I should be in an estrogen phase. I'm on day 7 of my cycle. This is where I should be. Yep, this matches, and then that changes right around ovulation, right? Hormones completely flip. Estrogen drops and progesterone jumps, right? It's progesterone dominant then for like the last 2 weeks of the cycle. So during that time, like with progesterone being higher, your basal body temperature also rises. So when that's higher, and again, it can be a degree, it can be 2 degrees higher, just depending on the person. But if your body temperature rises and stays high, then you're making and producing an adequate amount of progesterone for your system. That's one of the markers of it. So with doing that, and then Eastern medicine, spin on nutrition would be basically matching your food, the tone of your food to your basal body temperature. So during that estrogen phase, when your temperature is lower, you eat cooling foods. And then the warming phase, you'd eat warming foods. So again, in the Western world here, like this sounds like, what? Foods are cooling or warming? Like you heat it up or not? And some of it, yes, but some of it is like the tone of the food. So if you even Google this, warming foods, things that will pop up, things that are warming for progesterone. So this is the second part of it. Like beef is very warming for the body. Bacon, right? Like spicy foods, ginger, cinnamon, right? Warming for the body. And some of those things are also really helpful because at that point in your hormonal cycle, the digestive system actually slows down, right? Part of progesterone.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, progesterone literally means progestation. So the body's job at that point, whether or not there's a, fertilized egg there, it's prepping, right? It's prepping for it. It's progesterone's job. So it slows down your digestive system to absorb every possible nutrient from the food you're eating, all this other stuff. It's fascinating how many things shift and change in the female body. Yeah. And the female body actually needs more calorie, more nutrient, more minerals. You hydrate differently. Hydration doesn't upload into the cell the same way in progesterone phase as it does in estrogen phase.
You want to amplify the cooling and amplify the heating? Is that why you eat foods that foster that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because we want to lean into that ebb and flow, right? For the, if a lot of times the thought process, I want to balance my hormones, right? So you're thinking they should be the same, but in the female body, it's not designed to do that, right? it ebbs and flows throughout the month. There's certain weeks where these hormone levels should be different. And by leaning into that helps your body make and produce and maintain the correct amount of hormone. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a very different way of looking at the body and system. And so for women, again, it can feel really different. So again, like I'm an athlete, I've trained for a lot of different things my whole life. And one of the things that can be really frustrating is like you do a workout and like 1 week you're like, yeah, I feel so great. I'm getting so fit. Yeah. And then the next week, a week and a half later, you do the same workout. So it's like if you go for a run, 5-mile run, you're like, oh, I'm making great time. Look at me go. Woo. I'm really increasing my speed. My recovery is great. You're not that sore. That's the estrogen phase. Estrogen can help that cell turnover rate happen much faster. You build muscle faster in that estrogen phase. And then after ovulation, it's a totally different body. Progesterone slows things down. It slows down recovery rate. This is where like you go into a run and like 5 minutes into it, you're like, oh my gosh, my legs are cement. What is going on? Oh my gosh. Right. And you feel frustrated. There's a lot of trainers, like physical trainers or, people that work with, women, and they'll be like, yeah, sometimes I feel like, the clients that I work with, they get really frustrated because like they just aren't performing as well sometimes versus others. So I'm like, well, yeah, if they're tracking their hormones, that you can tell and you can actually adapt how you're training to what your hormones are doing. So again, you don't have to punish yourself for not making as good of a time, right? Okay.
And what can a woman expect to feel during the different parts of the cycle, and like a little, a bit of why?
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start at the beginning, days 1 through 14. Body is overall higher in estrogen. Estrogen, this is fantastic for a lot of women. You're going to get like clearer skin typically, have more energy, right? Recover faster, digestive system is working better, clearer mental focus at this point. They've done studies where they show that if you want to start a new healthy habit, this is the time of the month to do it. You're more likely to retain habits that are started during this phase. Yeah. I know. Interesting, right? Like, oh, okay. But that's one of the biggest things. Like your body also burns carbs faster at this point too. So, you might notice a difference in like glycogen storage and muscle tissue, can feel different, that type of a thing. So, but overall women notice that they like kind of feel more energetic. They feel better. Workouts seem easier and their gut is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. And then ovulation happens, about day 14, day 15, right? And then progesterone rises. Estrogen really drops and progesterone rises. And this is how it should go, right? If there's hormonal issues, it can feel different in the system. But when progesterone rises, that's when things kind of slow down because the hormones are focused on something different. They want to, just in case there's a viable egg there, they're going to, hopefully, start off gestation. So it slows down your digestive system. This is where a lot of women will start to feel like, oh, I'm a little more bloated or I'm not feeling as great, right? It also can slow down your muscle repair. So being more sore or more fatigued from doing a workout, you can feel more tired at night. Like you just kind of run out of energy quicker. Not as sharp mentally either. You know what I mean? Like you're like, yeah, I do okay. But man, in the afternoon, I start getting this brain fog. I don't know what's going on with me. Yeah.
So, okay, can you do anything to mitigate that? Or are you just stuck in being in this state, for 2 weeks?
Yeah. So kind of yes and no. You know what I mean? Like essentially this is kind of your body is functioning different. The best thing to do is start to lean into and work with the body by providing it with more nutrients, by giving your system at that point, more digestive aid, add in a probiotic if you need, get more digestive enzymes, like ginger is really great for the gut, drink some more ginger tea. You can help move that digestive system along. So you're not feeling like, I guess I'm just, bloated and I feel like garbage right now. And just trying to wait it out. There's a lot of things you can do self-care wise, nutrition wise, just to tweak that to help your system just function a little more smooth, but also just to realize, yep, this is my phase. I guess it's okay that I'm a little more, bloated. I didn't do anything bad. It's just kind of what my hormones are at right now, right? Like for a lot of women, they feel like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. No wonder why I feel like I'm slow sometimes when I go for a run. I'm not training wrong. It's just, my body's in a different phase, right? You took a different body for a run that day than you did.
How long is this phase for?
2 weeks. Yeah, it's 2
Okay,
weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then what? And then what? You'll go through
You go through
menstruation,
estrogen
and what
again.
happens then?
Yeah, and then estrogen
Oh,
starts over again. Yeah. Yeah. So
well, what
essentially
about the actual? What about the actual menstruation part? Like that occurs over what, like 3 to 7 days, and is that a separate phase, or is that? I mean, there must be something different about that part of it versus just the second half of the cycle.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Yeah. So I split it up in main for, to get started with in like these 2 phases, like just the like estrogen and progesterone. And then when you get granular on it for, okay, yep, when somebody has their cycle, like for those essentially 3 days, that point there is the lowest hormone phase of the body for women. Your levels of estrogen and progesterone are actually very, very low. It's actually the point of the body where you're most like a male body because your levels are just so low. Yeah. None, estrogen or progesterone, none of them are high. They're both really, really low. So again, on that note, a lot of women might just like feel like, ugh, I feel like garbage because that estrogen isn't there at all. It's that lowest point of it for the whole cycle, so you don't feel that like oomph that you normally feel like, that you'll feel a week later when you're past that phase. Does that kind of make sense?
Is it a good or a bad idea to supplement with a little bit of estrogen at that point, or is it just let it be natural and that's a better path to get through it?
Yeah, that's the natural phase of it. You don't need to add in anything at that point. It's just like, yep. And when your hormones are processing really well in the body, which happens in the liver mainly, you don't really notice a lot of issues with it. So a lot of women, when they're like, yep, I don't have any issues with my cycle. Nope, I don't have any PMS. I feel really good most of the time. Yeah, their liver is processing through those hormones really well. Where women have a lot of issue is typically with their cycle or even with ovulation, because that's the other phase, that hormones really switch is ovulation. And that's like a very short window that the body ovulates and those hormones just gears real fast. And it can feel like you got hit by a hormone truck. And that phase there, again, it's if your body's processing, if your liver is functioning pretty well, you can move through that phase pretty easily without any side effects from it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If someone's older and they've gone through menopause, do they still cycle?
That's a great question. Yes. So, I actually have a whole book on like menopause because, I really like to separate these things like for women in the female body. Like, so there's a whole section in my book, The Female Fat Solution. And I call it the 7 bodies of Eve. And it's just the different bodies that women can go through in their lifetime. Pre-puberty, puberty, like fertility things, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, like there's all these different bodies that you live through that are they're just different than the male body. You know what I mean? And each body that you go through can utilize different things nutritionally. And so especially for the menopausal body, one of the things that really sets it apart is that it doesn't utilize nutrients the same way. Like it'll take more protein to do the same job that protein used to do. And liver function is different. Cortisol response is different. So how your body's functioning is just different. So a lot of women will say, gosh, I was really healthy. I was fine. I was feeling good. I was fit and active. And I went through menopause and I put on 10 pounds. I didn't change anything. I eat the same. I work out the same. What the heck? And it's, well, you're living in a different body now. Hormone wise, those hormone levels have totally dropped, right? And your body reacts differently to stress now. So a higher amount of protein is important to help maintain the same muscle tissue. Otherwise, you just have much harder time for the body to maintain that same amount of muscle tissue that it used to, because it doesn't absorb process the same way.
What about if they've had a hysterectomy, or again, if they go through menopause, like do they still cycle in some way? What's that look like?
Yeah, so there is present estrogen and progesterone in the system. It's just on a much smaller scale. So a lot of times you will still have some type of tiny fluctuation of estrogen. It's just not on the same scale as it was when you have an active cycle, having a hysterectomy.
But nothing major changes, at least for menopause. It's more of like a static level.
Yes. Yeah. For most women, yes. There are some women that still have, a cyclic change, but a lot of time that's due to a buildup of hormone that's left over in their system that their liver hasn't processed out. Yeah.
Okay. And then hysterectomy, what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on what type of hysterectomy they had, if they still have their ovaries or not, because some women will just get their uterus removed and the ovaries are still there, and sometimes they take the ovaries. So if the uterus gets removed and they still have ovaries, they'll still go through a cycle until the ovaries just go dormant. until they go through quote unquote menopause, and the ovaries just go completely dormant, and then their levels just kind of, lower and stay at that low level. If it's a total hysterectomy and they get their ovaries removed too, sometimes they can get slammed into menopause like overnight, and that's not a good time. That's kind of harsh to go through. So it's helpful to support the body nutritionally, just helping it process these hormones better. So it's, so you're not, otherwise it's hard to process, right? Like our bodies are under so much stress. They have to process so many things that we're exposed to anyway. And then you have to internally do the hormone stuff too. That's a lot to ask of it.
Well, also, I've asked this question of other people in terms of taking medications.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's completely ignored. They say, oh, don't take it if you're pregnant, fine. But if you're cycling, how do medications affect a woman's body at different points in her cycle? And is there any even research there or experimentation or literature? Because I would think if you're older and you're taking a bunch of medications and you're still cycling, like it could have a big impact on you.
Oh, that is a great question. I love where your brain is going right now. So historically, actually, women were not actually allowed to be a part of any pharmaceutical studies or studies for medications until even 1993. Yep, 1993 was a law passed that allowed women to even partake in studies. So if you think about birth controls and all these other medications that are designed for women, they were tested on men that were 140 pounds and were called equivalent to a female body. And they were designed for the female body. They never did any tests on it. And even now, even since 1993, you'd think, oh, well, if they're going to do a study on something, they're going to use half women, right? Nope.
Yeah.
Because the female body goes through this hormonal shift and change, it takes longer to take, like 2 to 3 times longer to take the same amount of data on a female body as it does a male body. So it's more expensive.
Okay.
Women are part of studies, but you'll find that statistically, they can make up 5% of a data population, which is not enough to statistically to alter any results. And even if you're looking at mice or rats or whatever, it's the same thing. They use male mice, male rats. There's a great book. If you want to go down this rabbit hole, there's a great book. It's called Doing Harm. And It is all about research. Like there was a 70-year aging study that they did over hundreds of thousands of participants, mostly on men. So they studied how the male body ages, which didn't account for any women's hormones aging, just so a lot of what we know about health and nutrition and everything is really based on the male body, and they don't do specialized study for female body. Again, I'm an athlete, so a lot of the stuff in performance space, any performance supplements, things like that, right? Like pre-workout, all this stuff, post-workout stuff, branched chains, right? That's all studied on Division I male college athletes between the ages of 18 and 22. They don't even test older men on that stuff. They do those studies and they whip them out. They take men that are in the best shape, best health of their lives. And they, oh, look, you can gain this much muscle with this, beefcake creatine. I don't know, whatever it is. But that's what they're looking at. And they're not testing it on the female body and how it responds, how it affects their hormones, how these other things are impacted. So a lot of it literally is, we don't know.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess clinically you just have to figure it out. Is that what doctors do then? This
has really become like my life's mission, is really to educate women on a lot of this stuff and say, you know what, your body functions differently, and to take these things into account. And you have to be your own health advocate, and your health is cumulative. Learn as much as you can about how your body works and functions. And then if the things that you are doing, lifestyle wise, diet wise, exercise wise, supplement wise, all these things, are they working for you or not? And where do you need to decipher, okay, I think I need a different, supplement routine, or I need a different nutrition routine to acknowledge my hormones. And it's amazing, the results. I had a chat with a gal the other day, actually. First time I've ever talked to her. I'd never, heard from her before, but she said she had gotten my book. She had started, eating for cycle stuff. She's like, yep, my cycle became more regular over the course of 4 or 5 months. She's like, my cycle became more regular. My mood swings have almost gone away completely. They're still there a little bit, but it's so much better. My acne is better. And she goes, I've actually lost like 8 pounds and I haven't done anything else different. I haven't counted calories. I haven't even, like tried to stop eating sugar. She's like, that's the only thing I've been doing is eating for my cycle. I'm like, yeah, because your body's working better and you feel better. So you're going to get to a healthy weight and maintain it, that much better. But a lot of times we go down the same road. I mean, this was where I was, I was in the ER, doubled over from cysts that would burst. And I was just told, Vicodin and birth control, right? That's the tools that they have,
That's a bad option.
Yeah, that was not a shining moment for me, we'll say, in the ER. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the only tools they have. They don't have any other tools to give you. For women, here's a ton more tools, for your tool belt that you can use to work with your system. And again, you're not crazy. That's the other thing. There's so many women I chat with that they get like a psych referral. I'm not kidding. There was 4 women this week alone that told me that at some point they went in and they were told that, well, I think it's in your head and you must need to talk to somebody else and get on, an antidepressant or something, because
I've heard this about women that have thyroid problems. I've heard this about, I guess literally hysteria itself. I guess the term comes from like the 1800s, where it was related to, they thought women's problems were all like a form of hysteria and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yes. This is back when they thought like, oh, women should not ride on a train because the uterus could fly around on the body. It's crazy. It's crazy. Some of the stuff that was going on then. Yeah. But that's what they termed things. And that's still the case. It's still the case. And this goes even different classes of women, like women get judged differently when they go in, all this stuff that they're like, yes, I'm having pain. Total true story. I had a conversation with a gal today and she shared with me that she was one of those women this week that, had been told she had to go to a psych consult. They wanted to put her on a bunch of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, all these things, because at certain points of the month, she'd be in so much pain and it was awful. And so they did, some type of ablation that helped a little bit, but not really. And then it got really, really bad. And then they finally did a hysterectomy. And what they found was that her endometriosis was so bad that it had enveloped her bowels. So it was basically like squeezing on those intestines. So, I mean, if she had to go to the bathroom, like if she had fecal matter in there, right, it's, straining that. And then it was also cemented to her abdominal wall.
Jesus.
Yeah. So no wonder why she was in pain. If she ate something that gave her a little bit of gas, there's no room in the bowels for that to go through. She was in excruciating pain, And so when she said when she woke up in the recovery room after the surgery, she said that the doctor was talking to her and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much pain you were in, and like apologized to her and said, I'm sorry that, I thought you just needed like a psych consult, this was bad. Yeah. A lot of women have this story or something similar. So, yeah.
So what's, I know you can't save the whole world, but like, what's your approach with your patients? You have this, so eating right for the right time of your cycle. Mm-hmm. How much more is needed, to help women in general? Like, is that plenty enough? Is that helping a lot, or you want to take this a lot further?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great start. There's a lot of women that can regulate their cycle, improve their fertility, even out a lot of hormone issues by eating for their hormones, eating for your cycle, seed cycling. So essentially days 1 through 14, that estrogen phase, you're going to eat a tablespoon of pumpkin seed and a tablespoon of flax seed every day. And then during the days 15 through 28, the progesterone phase, same thing, a tablespoon of sesame and sunflower. Sesame, 1 tablespoon of sesame, 1 tablespoon of sunflower. And that, again, helps regulate because each of those seeds has specific nutrients in it, different vitamin levels, different, like zinc, all these other things to help the hormones process through better. And that's a tactic that can help regulate the cycle, improve mood, all that other stuff. So, I mean, that's a place where I start. I also do hormone testing. It's a Dutch test, which is a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones, where we test not only what your levels are, but I get to see how your body processes these hormones. I get to see your adrenal function, your cortisol patterns, how well is your body reacting and responding to stressors. your testosterone levels, nutrient levels, B vitamin levels. It's really in depth. It's really cool. It's a really cool test. And they even have a cycle mapping one where women take it throughout the month, so you can see exactly what your hormones are doing every couple of days throughout the whole month.
Okay.
So, yeah. And that's that one's the most helpful for like specific for fertility, but because sometimes women will ovulate really early or really late and not know it. And they're like, well, my cycle's regular. I'm like, well, yeah, but according to this, you're ovulating like a week late. So you're missing your fertility window completely, Yeah.
Yeah, there's there's like a lot of different ways to go with what you do.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you have like a team of people in the office, or are you trying to do all this yourself? Like what
Yeah. So I do have another doctor that works with me. But a lot of it is, just I have like some group programs, and I have some one-on-one programs. So it just depends on, what type of support people want and need. But those are, again, like for a lot of women, they notice an improvement in like minor hormone issues from just changing up their foods, and for if women have a more complex issue, then, they're going to benefit from more specific recommendations. If they have any other issues, like a thyroid issue, autoimmune issue, like Lyme, it can impact how fast their body can turn around. So there's different recommendations I make for those things. And, sometimes different supplements or things to help their liver or decrease the inflammation, stuff like that. Yeah.
Are you doing telemedicine?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured during, since the...
Yeah. Well, the other great thing about
the
Dutch test is that it's actually a dried urine test that you take at home. They send it right to your house.
Okay.
You pee on a little strip of paper, send it back in, and we get to see what your body's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really convenient. Yeah.
Well, very good. What's the best way for people to, to talk to you if they're having issues, and where can they find you? Like, tell me what's the name of the podcast, and then how do they find your website and everything?
Yeah, so pretty much everything is labeled Dr. Beth Westie. Facebook, Instagram, Dr. Beth Westie. My website is Dr. Beth Westie. My YouTube is Dr. Beth Westie. I do a ton of videos on educating on, female health stuff. And then my podcast is called The Female Health Solution, where I dive into more specifics, and recently, you're right, with all the COVID stuff, I've been talking more about the stress response for women because that's been popping up more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I know there's a ton more to ask you, but I think this is a good start. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.